All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into Livin Good Daily by Dr. Livingood.
Exciting.
Yeah. Are you familiar with this one?
I am. Yeah, I recently read it, actually getting ready for this, and really enjoyed it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So for our listeners out there who maybe haven't had a chance to crack open this book yet, we're going to break down some of the key ideas for you and really try to get to the heart of Dr. Livingood's message about what he calls real health.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So right off the bat, the book starts with this pretty stark statement. He basically says, despite all of our medical advancements, we're sicker than ever as a society.
Right, and I think what's so compelling about that is he ties it back to his own personal experience. He talks about his father, who seemingly was the picture of health, and then all of a sudden has this major health crisis.
Yeah, that story really stood out to me too. It's like his dad, had a successful career, was active, seemed to be doing all the right things, and then bam, out of nowhere, a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's what makes this book so relatable. He's not just some, doctor preaching from an ivory tower. He's someone who's been personally affected by this health crisis that we're all facing.
Right, and it makes you question, your own assumptions about health. Like, what if we're all just walking around with these ticking time bombs, ignoring those subtle warning signs?
That's exactly what he calls the healthcare illusion. We think we're healthy because we don't have any symptoms. But what he's saying is that's just an illusion. We might be feeling fine today, but what's going on beneath the surface?
Right. Are we just kind of masking those symptoms, until they become so big that we can't ignore them anymore?
Exactly. And his point is that by then it might be too late. We've missed that window of opportunity to really address the root cause of the problem.
And that's where he introduces this idea that the body is actually designed to heal itself.
Right. He believes that our bodies have this innate ability to heal, but only if we create the right conditions.
Okay, so that's kind of a paradigm shift, isn't it? Like, instead of looking outside of ourselves for these cures or these quick fixes, we need to focus on creating an internal environment that supports healing.
Exactly. And that's where I think he throws a bit of a curveball, because he's pretty critical of the very system that we rely on for healthcare.
He doesn't hold back, does he?
No, he doesn't.
It's like he's saying modern medicine is great for, patching us up when we're broken, but it's failing miserably at preventing us from falling apart in the first place.
Yeah, his argument is that the current system is very reactive and profit-driven. There's not a lot of incentive to keep people from getting sick when there's so much money to be made treating them after the fact.
Okay, so that's a pretty bold statement, to basically say that the system is rigged against us in a way.
Right. And he anticipates that pushback. He knows that people are going to say, well, what can we do about it? The system is so big and powerful. How can we as individuals make a difference?
And what does he say to that?
He basically says waiting for the system to change is like waiting for the tide to stop coming in. It's not going to happen. So instead of focusing on what we can't control, he says, let's focus on what we can control, which is ourselves.
Okay, so he's basically empowering us to become the CEOs of our own well-being.
Right. He provides a framework for doing just that, and it all boils down to 5 foundational pillars.
Oh, 5 pillars.
5 pillars that he believes are essential for creating real health.
Okay, lay them on me. What are these 5 pillars?
So the first one is nutrition.
Okay, makes sense.
The second is movement.
All right.
The third is stress management.
Okay, I'm seeing a theme here.
The fourth is detoxification, and the fifth is rest.
Okay, so it's not just about, eating your vegetables and going for a run every once in a while. It's about addressing all these different areas of our lives.
Exactly. He's saying that real health is a holistic thing. You can't just focus on one area and expect to thrive. You need to create balance across all 5 of these pillars.
Right, and it's not just about, the absence of disease. It's about feeling vibrant and energized and really living life to the fullest.
Exactly. And the best part is he doesn't just leave us hanging with these vague concepts. He actually provides really specific, actionable advice.
Okay, like what kind of advice?
Well, for example, in the nutrition section, he talks about simple dietary swaps.
Yeah.
Like trading out sugary drinks for water or adding more leafy greens to your meals.
Okay, so small changes, that can make a big difference.
Exactly. And then in the stress management section, he offers techniques like mindfulness and meditation and even breathing exercises that you can do anywhere, anytime.
Okay, and what about the rest piece? Because I think a lot of us struggle with getting enough sleep.
He's got you covered there, too. He provides tips for improving sleep quality, like creating a relaxing bedtime routine and avoiding screens before bed.
Okay, so he's really giving us a roadmap for how to create this environment of healing that he talks about.
Exactly. It's not about finding some magic pill or quick fix. It's about making sustainable lifestyle changes that support our overall well-being.
Now, I'm curious, when it comes to the nutrition piece, does he talk about specific diets? Like, is he a proponent of paleo or keto or veganism or any of that?
He doesn't really get into specific diets. He's more focused on the principles of eating whole, unprocessed foods and avoiding things that he calls the SAD diet.
The SSAD diet.
Yeah, SAD, which stands for the Standard American Diet,
Oh, I get it.
which he believes is a major contributor to the health problems that we're facing today.
Right. And I think it's safe to say that most of us are probably eating some version of the SAD diet, with all the processed foods and added sugars and all of that.
Right. And he's not just saying that it's unhealthy. He actually explains the science behind it. He talks about how these foods can cause inflammation in the body.
Inflammation.
Yeah, he defines inflammation as the body's natural response to injury or irritation. But when it becomes chronic, that's when it starts to cause problems.
So it's like our bodies are constantly in this state of low-grade inflammation because of the way that we're eating.
Exactly. And he argues that this chronic inflammation is at the root of many chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's.
So it's not just about, feeling sluggish or gaining a few extra pounds. It's about the long-term impact on our health.
Right. And he goes even deeper into this fascinating concept of the gut microbiome.
The gut microbiome.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard the term, but I'm not sure I fully understand what it is.
Basically, it's this ecosystem of trillions of bacteria that live in our digestive tract, and it plays a huge role in our overall health.
Really? So these little bacteria are calling the shots?
In a way, yeah. Dr. Livingood explains that these bacteria help us digest our food, they produce vitamins, they regulate our immune system, and they even play a role in our mood and behavior.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot more going on in our gut than I realize.
Right, and what's fascinating is that he talks about how the food that we eat can either nourish or harm our gut microbiome.
So if we're eating a lot of processed foods and sugary drinks, that's basically feeding the bad bacteria?
Exactly, and that can lead to all sorts of problems like digestive issues, weakened immunity, and even mental health problems.
Okay, so it's not just about what we're putting into our bodies, but how it's affecting this whole ecosystem in our gut.
Right, and he mentions a study where people with anxiety saw significant improvements just by taking probiotics, which are basically good bacteria.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's the gut-brain connection in action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how connected our gut health is to our overall health.
All right, so we've got the nutrition piece down. We've got the 5 pillars. What else does Dr. Livingood cover in this book?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was his discussion of environmental toxins.
Okay, so he's not just talking about the food that we eat. He's also talking about the things that we're exposed to in our environment.
Exactly. He argues that we're surrounded by toxins in our everyday lives, and these toxins can build up in our bodies and disrupt our systems.
Okay, like what kind of toxins are we talking about?
Well, he mentions things like cleaning products, pollutants in the air and water, even the chemicals in our personal care products.
Okay, so stuff that we're using every single day.
Right, and we might not even realize that we're being exposed to these toxins because they're often hidden. They're not something that we can see or smell.
Right, it's like this invisible threat.
Exactly, and he argues that these toxins can contribute to a whole range of health problems, from allergies and autoimmune diseases to cancer and infertility.
Okay, so this is getting a little alarming.
I know it can be overwhelming to think about, but the good news is that he offers practical advice for reducing our exposure to these toxins.
Okay, so it's not like we have to live in a bubble or anything.
No, but he does advocate for making smart choices, like switching to natural cleaning products, filtering our water, and avoiding plastics whenever possible.
So simple changes that can make a big difference.
Exactly. He's all about empowering us to take control of our environment and reduce our toxic load.
Okay, so it's like a two-pronged approach. We're focusing on what we're putting into our bodies and also what we're exposing ourselves to in our environment.
Exactly. It's about creating a healthy lifestyle that supports our bodies from the inside out.
All right, so we've covered nutrition, we've covered environmental toxins. What else is on Dr. Livingood's agenda?
Well, there's one more biggie that we can't ignore, and that's stress.
Stress of the silent killer.
Exactly. He calls it the silent killer because it can wreak havoc on our bodies without us even realizing it.
Right, it's like this underlying current that's always there.
And he argues that chronic stress is a major contributor to many of the health problems that we're facing today.
Okay, but I mean, stress is a part of life, right? Like, how do we avoid it?
He's not saying that we need to avoid stress altogether because that's impossible, but he's saying that we need to learn how to manage it effectively.
Okay, so it's about building resilience.
Exactly. He provides a ton of tools and techniques for managing stress, like mindfulness, meditation, breathing exercises, and even time management strategies.
Okay, so it's not just about, taking a bubble bath or going for a walk. It's about really addressing the root causes of our stress.
Right, and he talks about how chronic stress can actually dysregulate our hormones and suppress our immune system.
Okay, so it's not just affecting our mental and emotional health. It's also affecting our physical health.
Exactly. And he explains the science behind it in a way that's really easy to understand.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about nutrition, environmental toxins, stress, the 5 pillars of health. What else does Dr. Livingood get into in this book?
Well, one thing that I found really interesting was his discussion of detoxification.
Detoxification.
Yeah, he talks about how our bodies are constantly being bombarded with toxins, and it's important to support our natural detoxification pathways.
Okay, but I mean, our bodies are designed to detoxify themselves, right? Like, why do we need to do anything extra?
That's true, but he argues that the modern world is so toxic that our bodies can't always keep up. He compares it to a garbage disposal.
Hmm.
If you keep shoving too much stuff down there, it's going to get clogged.
Okay, that's a good analogy.
So he recommends incorporating certain practices into our lives that can help support our detoxification processes.
Okay, like what kind of practices?
Well, he talks about things like drinking plenty of water, eating a diet rich in fiber and antioxidants, and even using a sauna or dry brushing our skin.
Okay, so it's not about doing some crazy cleanse or anything. It's about making simple lifestyle changes that support our body's natural ability to detoxify.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that detoxification is not a one-time event. It's something that we need to be doing on an ongoing basis.
All right, so we've got the 5 pillars: nutrition, environmental toxins, stress detoxification. It sounds like Dr. Livingood is covering all the bases here.
He really is. He's providing a comprehensive roadmap for achieving real, lasting health.
And I think what's so refreshing about his approach is that it's not about deprivation or strict rules. It's about finding what works for you and creating a lifestyle that you can sustain long term.
Exactly. He's all about empowering us to take control of our health and become the best versions of ourselves.
Okay, so I think we've given our listeners a pretty good overview of the book, but I'm curious, what really stood out to you in Living Good Daily? What's that one nugget of wisdom that you keep coming back to?
It's tough to choose just one
Mm-hmm.
because there are so many gems in this book. But I think what really resonated with me was his emphasis on bio-individuality.
Bio-individuality, what's that?
Basically, it's the idea that we're all unique, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Okay, so there's no one-size-fits-all approach to health.
Exactly. He encourages us to experiment and listen to our bodies and find what truly works for us.
So it's about becoming our own health detectives in a way.
Exactly. It's about tuning into our own inner wisdom and figuring out what makes us feel our best.
I love that. And I think that's such an important message because it takes the pressure off, We don't have to follow some rigid set of rules. We can create our own path to health.
Exactly. And he provides a framework for doing just that, with the 5 pillars and all the tools and techniques that he shares.
Okay, so if you had to sum up Dr. Livingood's message in just a few words, what would you say?
I would say that real health is about taking a holistic approach to our well-being. It's about nourishing our bodies from the inside out, managing stress, reducing our exposure to toxins, and creating a lifestyle that supports our overall vitality.
I love it. It's about taking ownership of our health and becoming the CEOs of our own bodies.
Exactly. And it's a journey, not a destination.
All right, so I think we've laid a pretty solid foundation for our deep dive into Living Good Daily. But stay tuned because in the next episode, we're going to get even more specific. We're going to dive deeper into the 5 pillars, explore Dr. Livingood's 21-day reset plan, and share some practical tips that you can start implementing today.
Sounds good.
I'm excited to keep exploring this book with you and with our listeners.
Me too.
All right, so until next time, stay curious, stay well, and keep diving deep. So we were talking about stress and how it can be this kind of silent killer.
Yeah.
I mean, in today's world, it feels like there's always something to worry about. Work, money, relationships, the news. It's like a constant barrage of stressors.
Right. And I think what's so insidious about stress is that we often don't even realize how much it's affecting us.
Yeah.
We might just feel a little bit on edge or a little bit more irritable, but we don't connect those feelings to the underlying stress.
Right. It's like this low-grade hum that's always running the background.
Exactly. And Dr. Livingood argues that even this low-grade stress can have a significant impact on our health over time.
So it's not just about having a bad day or feeling overwhelmed every once in a while. It's about the cumulative effect of all these little stressors.
Right. He compares it to carrying around a heavy backpack. At first it might not feel like a big deal, but if you keep carrying it day after day, it starts to weigh you down.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, especially when you think about all the different types of stress that we're exposed to. There's work stress, there's family stress, there's financial stress, there's environmental stress. It's like we're coming at it from all angles.
Exactly. And he talks about how our bodies are designed to handle short bursts of stress,
Mm.
like that fight or flight response that kicks in when we're facing a threat.
Right. So, like, if we're running from a tiger or something.
Exactly. But the problem is that in modern life, we're rarely facing those kinds of acute threats. Instead, we're dealing with this chronic low-grade stress that never really goes away.
And our bodies aren't really equipped to handle that kind of stress, are they?
No, they're not. He explains that when we're constantly stressed, our bodies are in this state of fight or flight, which means that our sympathetic nervous system is activated.
The sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, it's the part of our nervous system that's responsible for that fight or flight response.
Okay.
And when it's activated, our bodies release all these stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline.
Okay, so we're basically flooding our bodies with these hormones on a regular basis.
Exactly. And that can lead to all sorts of problems like high blood pressure, increased risk of heart disease, digestive issues, weakened immunity, and even problems with sleep.
Wow. Okay, so stress is definitely not something to mess around with.
No, it's not. And that's why Dr. Livingood dedicates a whole chapter in his book to stress management techniques.
So what kind of techniques does he recommend?
Well, he's a big proponent of mindfulness and meditation.
Okay, I've heard a lot about those, but I'm not sure I really understand what they are or how they work.
Well, basically, mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Okay, so it's about being in the here and now.
Exactly. And meditation is a practice that helps us cultivate mindfulness.
Okay, so they kind of go hand in hand.
They do. And Dr. Livingood explains that even just a few minutes of mindfulness or meditation each day can have a profound impact on our stress levels.
Really? I mean, that sounds almost too good to be true.
I know, but he explains the science behind it. He talks about how these practices can actually change the structure and function of our brains.
Really? So we can actually rewire our brains to be less stressed?
In a way, yes. He cites studies that show that people who practice mindfulness and meditation regularly have lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and they're also better able to cope with stressful situations.
Okay, so it's not just about feeling more relaxed in the moment. It's about building resilience to stress over time.
Exactly. And he also provides some really practical tips for incorporating mindfulness and meditation into our daily lives.
Okay, like what kind of tips?
Well, he suggests things like setting aside a few minutes each day to meditate, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, that seems doable.
And he also talks about finding opportunities to practice mindfulness throughout the day, like paying attention to our breath while we're washing the dishes or really savoring the taste of our food when we're eating.
Okay, so it's about bringing that awareness to the present moment, even in the midst of our busy lives.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of self-care.
Self-care.
Yeah, he says that self-care is not selfish. It's essential for our well-being.
I love that.
And he encourages us to make time for activities that nourish our mind, body, and spirit.
Okay, but I mean, let's be real here. A lot of us are so busy and stressed that we barely have time to shower, let alone take a yoga class or get a massage.
I hear you. And he acknowledges that it can be challenging to make time for self-care when we're feeling overwhelmed. But he argues that it's precisely when we're feeling the most stressed that we need it the most.
Okay, so it's about prioritizing our well-being, even when it feels like we don't have the time or energy.
Exactly. He says that even small acts of self-care can make a big difference, like taking a few minutes to read a book or listen to music or just spend some time in nature.
Okay, I can definitely get behind that.
And he also talks about the importance of setting boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah. He says that we need to learn to say no to things that drain our energy and prioritize the things that fill us up.
Okay, so it's about protecting our time and energy.
Exactly. And he provides some really helpful tips for setting boundaries with work with family, with friends, even with ourselves.
Okay, so it's about creating a life that supports our well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he argues that when we prioritize self-care and set healthy boundaries, we're actually better equipped to handle the inevitable stresses of life.
All right, so we've talked about mindfulness meditation, self-care boundaries. Is there anything else that Dr. Livingood recommends for managing stress?
Well, one thing that he emphasizes is the importance of movement.
Movement.
Yeah, he says that exercise is one of the most powerful stress relievers there is.
Okay, but I mean, I thought we were already covering that with the 5 pillars, the movement pillar.
We are, but he specifically talks about the stress-reducing benefits of exercise.
Okay, so it's like a double whammy. It's good for our physical health and it's good for our mental health.
Exactly. He explains that when we exercise our bodies, release endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects.
Okay, so it's like a natural high.
Exactly. And he also talks about how exercise can help us process emotions and release pent-up tension.
So it's not just about, burning calories or building muscle. It's about using our bodies to manage stress.
Exactly. And he encourages us to find activities that we enjoy, whether it's dancing, hiking, swimming, or just going for a walk in the park.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be some grueling workout. It's about finding something that feels good and that we can stick with.
Exactly. And he also recommends incorporating movement into our daily lives, like taking the stairs instead of the elevator or walking or biking to work instead of driving.
So it's about making small changes that add up over time.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that consistency is key. It's better to do a little bit of movement each day than to try to cram it all in on the weekends.
All right, so we've got mindfulness, meditation, self-care, boundaries, movement. It
Yeah.
sounds like Dr. Livingood is giving us a whole toolkit for managing stress.
He is, and he emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might not work for another.
Right, so it's about finding what works for us and creating our own personalized stress management plan.
Exactly. And he encourages us to experiment and to be patient. Might take some time to find what works best for us.
Now, I'm curious, does he talk about the connection between stress and the other pillars of health, like nutrition and detoxification?
He does. He explains that stress can actually interfere with our body's ability to digest food properly and to eliminate toxins efficiently.
Oh, wow. So it's like a vicious cycle. Stress can lead to poor digestion and detoxification, which can then lead to more stress.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to address stress as part of a holistic approach to health.
Right, so it's all connected.
It is. And he emphasizes that when we manage stress effectively, it creates a ripple effect throughout our entire being.
I love that.
We have more energy, we sleep better, we're more resilient to challenges, and we're even more joyful and present in our lives.
So it's not just about feeling less stressed, it's about feeling better overall.
Exactly, and I think that's what's so empowering about Dr. Livingood's message. He's not just telling us what's wrong with us. He's giving us the tools and knowledge to heal ourselves and to create a life that truly supports our well-being.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground on stress, but one thing that I'm really curious about is Dr. Livingood's 21-day reset plan.
Ah, yes, the famous 21-day reset.
Everyone loves a good reset, right? I mean, it's like hitting the refresh button on our health.
Exactly, and Dr. Livingood explains that the 21-day reset is designed to jumpstart our journey to real health.
Okay, so it's like a springboard.
Exactly. It's not meant to be a long-term solution, but rather a way to break old habits, reset our systems, and create a foundation for lasting change.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What does this reset actually involve?
Well, it's a multifaceted program that addresses all 5 pillars of health, but it starts with a pretty significant dietary shift.
Okay, like what kind of shift are we talking about?
Well, for 21 days, you'll be eliminating all processed foods, added sugars, artificial sweeteners, gluten and dairy.
Okay, so it's like a pretty clean eating plan.
It is, and he provides a ton of delicious recipes and meal plans to make it easy to follow.
Okay, so it's not just about deprivation. It's about nourishing our bodies with whole, nutrient-dense foods.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of eating mindfully. Really savoring our food and paying attention to how it makes us feel.
Okay, so it's not just about what we're eating, but how we're eating.
Exactly. And in addition to the dietary changes, he also recommends incorporating daily movement into the reset.
Okay, so like how much movement are we talking about?
He suggests aiming for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days in the week.
Okay, and what kind of exercise does he recommend?
Anything that you enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's walking, running, swimming, dancing, hiking, or even just doing some gentle stretching.
Okay, so it's about finding something that feels good and that we can stick with.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of getting enough sleep during the reset.
Okay, how much sleep is enough sleep?
He recommends aiming for 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep each night.
Okay, and does he have any tips for improving sleep quality?
He does. He suggests things like creating a relaxing bedtime routine, avoiding screens before bed, and making sure that our bedrooms are dark, quiet, and cool.
Okay, those are all good tips.
And in addition to the dietary changes, the movement, and the sleep, he also incorporates stress management techniques into the reset.
Okay, so it's really about addressing all 5 pillars.
It is. He provides guided meditations, breathing exercises, and journaling prompts to help us manage stress and cultivate a more positive mindset.
Okay, so it's like a holistic approach to resetting our health.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And he explains that the 21-day time frame is significant because it takes about that long to break old habits and form new ones.
It's about rewiring our brains for a healthier lifestyle.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that the reset is not a quick fix. It's not going to magically solve all of our problems, but it's a powerful way to kickstart our journey to real health.
Okay, and what about after the 21 days are over? What happens then?
Well, he provides a ton of guidance on how to maintain the healthy habits that we've established during the reset.
Okay, so it's about creating a sustainable lifestyle.
Exactly. He encourages us to continue eating whole, unprocessed foods, to prioritize movement and sleep, and to practice stress management techniques on a regular basis.
So it's about making these changes a part of our everyday lives.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that it's not about being perfect. It's about progress, not perfection.
I love that. And I think that's so important because it takes the pressure off.
It does. He reminds us that we're all human and we're going to have slip-ups along the way, but the key is to just keep going.
Right. It's about getting back on track and not beating ourselves up when we make a mistake.
Exactly. And he encourages us to celebrate our wins, no matter how small they may seem.
Okay, so it's about focusing on the positive.
Exactly. And he reminds us that real health is a journey, not a destination.
I love that.
So it's about enjoying the ride and making choices that support our well-being every step of the way.
So it sounds like this 21-day reset is a pretty powerful tool for transforming our health.
It really is. I mean, it's not a magic bullet or anything, but it's a great way to kind of hit the reset button and start fresh.
And I love that it's not just about the 21 days. It's about creating a foundation for lasting change.
Exactly. He provides a ton of guidance on how to maintain those healthy habits long term, once the reset is over.
Yeah, so it's not like we're just white-knuckling it for 21 days and then going back to our old ways.
Right. It's about integrating those changes into our lives in a way that feels sustainable and enjoyable.
I think that's key, making it enjoyable. Because if it feels like a chore, we're less likely to stick with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of finding what works for you, experimenting with different approaches and really listening to your body.
So it's about becoming our own health advocates.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so empowering about his message. He's not telling us what to do. He's giving us the tools and knowledge to figure it out for ourselves.
Right. It's about taking ownership of our health and making choices that support our well-being.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important message in today's world where we're constantly being bombarded with conflicting information about health and wellness.
Right. It's like, who do you trust?
Exactly. And I think Dr. Livingood does a really good job of cutting through the noise and providing evidence-based advice that's grounded in science.
Yeah, and I think what I appreciate about his approach is that it's not about being perfect, It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that we're all human and we're going to make mistakes along the way. But the key is to just keep learning and growing and moving forward.
Right. It's about being kind to ourselves and not giving up on our health goals.
Exactly. And I think that's a message that we all need to hear.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Living Good Daily, I'm curious, what's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that real health is within our reach. It's not some elusive goal that's only attainable for a select few. It's something that we can all achieve if we're willing to put in the effort.
I love that. And I think it's a really hopeful message, because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the information out there about health and wellness. But Dr. Livingood reminds us that it doesn't have to be complicated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He provides a simple yet powerful framework for creating a healthy lifestyle. And he emphasizes that even small changes can make a big difference.
So for our listeners out there who are feeling inspired to take control of their health, what's one piece of advice that you would give them?
I would say start with one small change. Something that feels manageable and sustainable. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Just focus on one thing at a time and build from there.
I love that. And I think that's a great place to leave it. So to our amazing listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Living Good Daily. We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
And remember, real health is a journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself. Celebrate your wins and never give up on feeling your best.
We're cheering you on every step of the way. Until next time, stay curious, stay well, and keep diving deep.